Well, that was probably right up. Oh, probably. Well, that's the thing, though, right? That's the thing.
I can find something really quick.
This is pretty chill. She has also passed a lot.
Shades.
And she's supposed to speak like a French sauce. There. Yeah, she's supposed to speak. She is the speech and debate coach. She's great. There's a lot of. Why? You just don't like style. Like get off on the wrong foot. You still get terrible. And then we get mad at
Here we go. First thing is first. Everyone grab one of these? All right. I don't want to do the quiz on Monday. So we're going to do the quiz for the reading on Tuesday. And that means I have good news for you. I'm going to add a few pages. Calm down. It's okay. Yeah. Isn't it Friday? We're not there yet. Isn't it good to anticipation and growth? It'll be that much better. Of course, I have to leave the room. Sorry. So I'm going to add pages. We're going to go 351 to 385. It's 3 more terms on immigration. And so that'll be on Tuesday. Sound good? 351 to 385. So basically it's through nativism. Sound good? So the quiz will only be, it'll be no more than 100 questions. I promise. In fact, I bet it won't be over 80. Won't be over 80. Through nativism. Sound good? Number 2. You know what day it is? Well, before that is the day before Izzy's birthday. Happy early birthday. I don't know why I just guessed. You know, I kind of, that was intuitive. But what day is it today? It is Flamingo Friday, everybody. And we haven't had Flamingo Friday, and it feels like months. And this is the only thing I know for most of you gets it through the weekend. Flamingo Friday, because then we have the long weekend. But you know what? Monday will be here. But Flamingo Friday, I need a drum roll. Drum roll, please. Drum roll, let's hear it. Drum roll, come on. Give it up. Yes! Come on, give it up. Come on, give it up. Give it up. Come on. By the way, I can't notice the rug. You guys see the rug today? Yeah, exactly. Ties the room together. Remember that. The rat's doing well. There's another flamingo here. And a bird. And a cow. Oh, and then the flamingo house is growing as we move. That's done by someone in 5th period. Let's see where it ends. It's becoming quite elaborate. It was huge last year. It covered my desk. It covered everything. So we'll see. It just kind of grows. Next week, we do have to do an essay test. And essay tests are good to get a rise. I know it's more work, but, and you got to do it. It's what you got to do. You got to write it, and I get to grade it by throwing it down the stairs. Yeah, see? The grading stairs are ready to roll. We might have to do that naturally. You can take which grade you get. There is an E out there. And you know what E means? Back to elementary school. You've been around 1st graders? They just come at you with babies. They're all like this tall. It's terrifying. So, who wrote The Wealth of Nations? Adam Smith, The Wealth of Nations. What do you call how people deal with scarce? Yeah, that's economics. And something else. Oh, what year did he write it? What else happened in 1776? Yeah, Independence Day. So that's why next year is going to be our 250th anniversary of the country. 250. I can remember the centennial of 1776, 1876. I remember the bicentennial. 1976, quite well. I forgot to do something. Everyone act busy for a second. Well done. I really feel, I could sense. All right, back to this. And what did Adam Smith, the interaction of supply and demand in a market, what did he say would set the price? He had a name for that unfeeling entity that would set the price between supply and demand. Yeah. The invisible hand of the market. Yes. Or is that like someone in third period said, the ghost hand? I thought that was pretty good. I enjoyed that one. So the invisible hand of the market. So he's laying this out. By the way, I'm telling you about this economics. I'm fascinated by it. And not just because I think it's important to know a little bit of economics. But the big thing is, these are how decisions are made. These are things we have to accept about the market. And this is why decisions about the market, money, hey, all politics. This is politics. This is our life. So this is really important for our history. These are making decisions that will decide little things like how much college will cost in a year. That's what we're talking about. These are the kind of decisions. So back to this. Competition and risk. Speaking of that, what did John Deere invent? Steel tip plow. How about Cyrus McCormick? What did he invent? The reaper. Don't forget, Halloween. This is the mechanical reaper. And reaped the hallway. And you can really tell this school was designed for a small school of about 350 to 400 people, can't you, when you go in the main hallway? When they first built this 60 years ago, yeah, it was supposed to be there's going to be a private Catholic school called Sunday. Maybe 400 students. So every time you try to go through that main junction over there and you wonder why it's so crowded, that's why. School's pretty good shape. Not hell of a high. But they're getting a new school. Profit margin, we had this, didn't we? Did we get the cost?
Oh, yeah.
Did we get to the wage system?
Yes.
Hey, what did Samuel Morrison think? That's Telegram. Who invented the sewing machine? Eli's Howe, yeah. And Eli Whitney, what is his biggest invention? Cotton. All right, good. Innovation breeds innovation. Let's get back. Wage system, what decides wages? The market. The market sets wages, supply and demand. Literally, if you're a worker, you're selling your wages to the employer. You're in a market too. It might not feel like it, if we have this system where it's almost like a reward, you get a job, but in reality, you're entering the market like anybody else selling your wages. So does skill have any effect on wages?
No.
Only if that skill is in demand. Everyone catch the difference? You can be the most skilled worker in the world, but if your skill isn't in demand, it doesn't matter. You make the greatest wooden shoes ever. Good luck. It's not in demand. And we see this time after time with people who have a skill, and then it's made obsolete. And that's why skills aren't as important as critical thinking. It's critical thinking you can adapt. If you just know your skill, it'd be tough. It'd be very tough. Thinking in knowledge, that's something that can't be replaced. It really can't. And it's probably sometimes it's undervalued. So, how about hard work? That's no direct effect on wages, not at all. None at all. Only if there's a real shortage of workers who will work hard and they want to keep you. But if there's a lot of unemployed workers, they don't care, they'll hire somebody else. Hey, if there's desperate workers. By the way, desperate workers do what to wages? Drop them dramatically. Drop them dramatically. You keep workers desperate and they're scared, they won't leave. And how about profit? If profit goes up, what happens to wages? It has no effect. Do you see the issue for workers though? So you're entering this new wage system, and all of a sudden, no matter how hard you work, it doesn't affect your wages. No matter how hard you work, you don't necessarily reap the bounty of that extra work. Somebody else does. Doesn't matter how skilled you are, if that skill is a lot of people have that skill, doesn't matter. That's when you start getting this designation in the new modern world of skilled and unskilled workers. And it isn't that the unskilled workers don't have skills. Of course they have skills. They just don't have skills that are in demand. And therefore, what kind of wages? Who gets higher wages? People with skills in demand. And for years, just having a college diploma got you higher wages. Still does. It's not as much as it used to. It still does. Why? There weren't as many, and that was in demand. So, wages set by supply and demand. This is really hard to deal with. I mean, you lose a lot of your freedom when you enter the workplace, a lot of your control. You're told when to get up and when to go to work, etc., and then you don't reap in the profits. It's really, really, really disruptive to society. Really. And the thing about it is the system didn't come overnight. So you can imagine a situation where you live in the United States, especially if you don't live in one of the really big cities here, and you know there's massive changes coming. Huge changes. You know something big is coming. But you're not sure what it is. You're not sure how it affects you. But you know you can't stop it. And it's coming for you. How do you feel? Feel good? Things going well? Yeah, everything in the world is going to change, but I don't know how it's going to affect me. I might lose everything. Hey, sounds good. Every time there's massive economic disruption, there's a wave of religious, a wave of kind of a religious awakening. Every single time. Why? The world's scary. So back to this. Here is the one thing that those in competition can control. They can't control wages in a free market. They can control efficiency. If you become more efficient, if you become more efficient, what does that do to your costs? What do we call this? There's a term for it. If you can get more production out of an individual worker. Remember the mechanical reaper could do the work of 10 people at first? That means a massive increase in the amount you get from each worker. A massive increase. There's a word for this. If you can increase productivity. Productivity is the amount produced per worker. So instead of 10 to reap your crops, it only needs 1. That's a 1,000% increase in productivity. Every time you get rid of a worker but produce the same amount, it's increasing productivity. So we're talking not just about getting more work, we're talking about if you get more work out of workers, you don't need as many workers, that cuts costs. That's why everybody's investing, or very wealthy people are investing in generating AI. We don't have real AI, it's generated. It acts like it, but it's not really thinking. With large language models. Why do you think it will replace workers? They can get rid of workers, and that will cut their costs. And if you get rid of workers, that's more unemployed workers. What would that do to wages for everybody? That's what they're all investing. Will that happen? No, won't happen the way they said. But there will be massive disruption. That's part of the insecurity about it. Back to this. Division of labor is the best way to do it. If you do one thing over and over again, you become really good at it and efficient, don't you? You get better and better and faster and faster. I mean, think about it. If you had to learn every part of a process to make a product, you might become good, but you never become really good. Adam Smith's example, and this is actually from a drawing from his original book, was making pins. Like sewing. Anyone get the idea for a sewing pin? Can anyone here make a pin? For sewing? No, none of you. None of us. I wouldn't even know. I mean, I've seen iron before, but I wouldn't know where to find it. Or for that matter, the nickel or the cadmium to make steel. I don't know how to cut steel. It was called. Do you need coal to heat it? I don't know. I know what coal is, but how do you make a mold? that when you pour in molten steel, it won't destroy the mold. Anyone know how? See the issue here? And so on and so on. So for one person to know all that, first off, they got to be amazingly talented. But are they going to get really good at any one? No. But if you have one group to provide the raw materials, one group to do, it's called puddling steel, making the mold, getting them out of the mold, which is a really precise thing because they'll snap apart if you do it too fast, etc. You become really good at one thing, you're more efficient. Division of labor. Now, me saying that all my guess is all of you are like, yeah, of course, that makes sense. But it was still really revolutionary thinking at the time before machines, where everyone just did all the work themselves. They just had to do it. And now think about division of labor when you don't have a human doing it, but a machine doing it over and over and over and over and over again. Wouldn't that be incredibly efficient? Would you need fewer workers? You might get to the point where you need no workers. That's the thing about manufacturing today. There's almost no workers. It's almost all done by machine tools. So, division of labor. Really important. It's more efficient. And that's why machines are crucial. He's writing free capitalism though. Why? Why? Why do you become efficient? You can't really control wages, but why do you want to cut your costs? If you're in business, what do you want to do? If you can cut your costs, what can you do to the price you sell per unit? Drop it and still keep, remember that term profit margin between revenues and costs? You can still keep a profit margin if you can drop your costs, drop your price. Why do that? Why would you ever do that? More people buy it, but what about, and what would you do to your competition?
Drop prices.
Yeah, hopefully force them to drop the prices where eventually they won't be able to afford the cost. Everyone's gonna be doing it. Everyone's gonna be trying to cut costs. But you can make more money if you can drive your competitors out of business, can't you? That's why people want to become more efficient. Competition is risk. What do you want to do? Your goal, limit competition. Then you make more money. So what does everybody want to create? What do you call it to get rid of competition? A monopoly. There's a natural progression in all business, which makes perfect sense. A monopoly. And no value judgment. We can say this is good or bad. Adam Smith said this is really bad. Monopolies are really bad, Adam Smith says. But there's just monopoly. Everyone wants one. If there's a monopoly, you can charge higher prices, can't you? Not only that, if you're the only one hiring workers, what does that do to wages? Wages. So, more money, more wealth, less cost. Have you heard of Walmart? Who's played Monopoly? Who likes Monopoly? I used to, then it started getting fired. The last Monopoly game I played was about 40 years ago. And it ended with a fist fight. Through the table, next thing you know, we're swinging. Monopoly's a violent game. Have you noticed only one company makes Monopoly? Think about it. So, why is this important? Government policy, aka politics. Government creates money. They make the market. They make the rules. Government. That's why there's not ever been a free market. It's created by politics. And this is another one. If you don't like politics, everything about your life in a capitalistic society will be decided by somebody who's not you. Now I get it. I hate the horse race of political elections. But there's elections because they go through the real meat of politics, making the rules. And if people don't pay attention to the making of the rules, wow, they make rules. Just a few people. So this is all politics. So Adam Smith is writing this world. And Adam Smith doesn't like monopolies. But he looks at it at 1776. And he started doing this in 1760s. And as you see it, there's a natural progression towards monopoly. And we can't have monopoly. He's anti-monopoly. But there's a natural progression. This is not bad. If you want market share, you'll produce better quality goods, won't you? You'll be more efficient. That's a good thing. But the goal is monopoly. So we got to encourage competition. Anti-monopoly, encourage competition. Why encourage competition? Well, with this basic deal. What happens to prices if there's competition? Prices drop because you can't raise your prices too much to go buy your competitor. How about quality of goods? Will that get better or worse if there's competition? It gets better. Quality goes up because if you put out garbage, people will go to your competitor. Not always. I mean, have you heard of Taco Bell? But some people like Taco Bell. By the way, Burger King, not a fan of it. I had no idea there was 3 Burger Kings. I had no idea. I mean, each one is really different. So, how about efficiency? If there's competition, is there less resources wasted? Yes. Efficiency goes up. Efficiency goes up. Competition does all of these. Hey, if there's a monopoly, who cares, right? If you have a monopoly, who cares where you're going to go? I'll get back to my constant complaint about teams. It operates like a monopoly. What are you going to do? Efficiency? Who cares? Where are you going to go? So, that's what Adam Smith is talking about. And so he sought government interference in competition is actually helping monopolies. Why? You notice I put a picture of the East India Company up there. Do you remember way back when the Tea Act that gave the East India Company a monopoly on tea? As he saw governments just stepped in to create monopolies for their buddies, he despised, what is the imperial policy? Where the mother country tries to accumulate gold by getting colonies to provide raw materials in the captive market and maximizing exports. Say it again? Yeah, mercantilism. Do you remember the term mercantilism? I hope you remember it. It'll be on your final. Mercantilism. Big deal. He hated it. He hated mercantilism. But it's still free capitalism. So what is the ideal system? No monopolies, but then don't allow companies to become monopolies, but don't have government interference to create monopolies. That's why he said laissez-faire or laissez-faire. Hands off by government. Don't mess with competition. So this is policy. That will lead to more competition and let the market decide, aka the ghost hand of the market, the invisible hand. We'll let the market decide prices, and the market is not, the market's always rational in a free market because everyone's acting in their own self-interest. It won't be based upon greed or avarice or lust for power or whatever it might be. Laissez-faire. And so it's really fascinating to me. 2 opposing ideas towards the growing market. Thomas Jefferson thought, yes, exactly, this is what I believe. And so did Hamilton. They both read it and were like, oh yeah, exactly. And Adam Smith was probably closer to Jefferson, but right in the middle. So, the only problem is this. He wrote this in 1776. It's still pre-industrial revolution. Don't forget, the US Constitution was pre-industrial revolution. Pre-capitalism, which is always kind of amazing to me, since we all grew up in kind of late-stage capitalism. It's pre-capitalism. And Adam Smith died before capitalism really took hold. I made the pilgrimage to Adam Smith's grave. There it is in Edinburgh, Scotland. I can remember that was a really interesting day. It was a lot of fun. It was actually cold at that moment the sun came out. And I almost bought a kilt. Moving on, there's a kilt, black watch plaid, and I decided I wanted the kilt. And it was about 250 pounds. Remember, pounds are British currency. And In dollars, the exchange rate then, that would have been about $350. And I decided I really wanted it. I'm like, well, when am I ever, chance getting that girl killed? I wanted it. And my wife brought up a very valid point. Does anyone know the valid point my wife brought up? When would I ever wear the kilt? And I, of course, said every day. But reason one, aka my wife, and I did not buy the kilt. I should have bought the kilt. Yeah, I would never. But it looks so cool. Like I could wear a kilt. What is capitalism? Capitalism is a market economy for all goods. All goods are in the market now, and that includes labor. Everything's for sale. And you have private ownership of the means of production. Why? For profit. But the biggie is workers, therefore, are now selling their wages for work. It wasn't like this before. There were elements. There's elements of pre-capitalism. This is a big deal. The capital changes everything. And once that society took hold, those who did not own the capital were at a competitive disadvantage and lost. Went out of business, lost their farm, whatever it might be. Lost their skill, didn't matter. A competitive disadvantage. And it all took a couple generations, and there it is. And so, we were kind of late capitalism. The United States was created pre-capitalist. And so, capitalism could be around. There might be a new form of capitalism. Capitalism would go away because we have not always had capitalism. But that's what it is. But it's a market. So, it's trying to take that market principles of competition, but at the same time, they don't like the market. So let's get to what this is going to mean. Machines are shockingly expensive. Remember that term risk? To buy the machines, textile mill right here, more risk. Competition is always a risk. Machines are really expensive. When we take the most basic element, think about small farms. The mechanical reaper, great. How do you pay for it? So who can afford the machines? Yeah, say it again. Yeah, large. They got to be big. Big. The only ones can afford it. So if the machines are a way to get a competitive advantage, and the bigger are the only ones who can afford it, who has a competitive advantage? Big or small? Big. We have a term for that. It is the iron rule of not only of economics, but the iron rule of life. It's called, put a big star by this one, economies of scale. Scale. The big have a competitive advantage because they can afford, on the most basic element, they can afford the machines and therefore become more productive. Small farmers couldn't afford the reaper. Small producers could not afford the power lines. Small producers could not afford the large assembly lines. Hey, there used to be 50 car companies in the United States. How many are there today? 2.5. Well, 3.5. I'm sorry, 3.5. Chrysler was kind of a iffy, kind of in the middle now. And half their production's in Canada or Mexico. So the big has an advantage. Always, 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 always. Small, a disadvantage. Now, it doesn't mean the big can't screw it up. They can make a bunch of dumb decisions and screw it up. Maybe someday we'll tell you about Chrysler, or a really good example is General Motors. They can screw it up. But they have a competitive advantage. And just think about it. Just take a basic example. Let's say you want to start a grocery store. Helen. I mean, that's really expensive, isn't it? Think about the capital expenditure to start a grocery store. Everything from the actual land, the store, and you need parking and all that. But then you have to buy the actual product. A lot of it's money, isn't it? A lot of risk. Let's see. Let's look at the competition. How are you going to do against Walmart? Who is going to have higher costs? You, the small grocery store, or Walmart? Because Walmart is bigger, they're going to have significantly lower costs per unit because economies of scale. Has everyone got that? So how long will your store last? It's really hard to compete in Spain. I mean, Albertsons and Safeway couldn't. So they combined to the same store. And they had to close one of the Albertsons because they were the same. They couldn't scale. Is there anybody else? There's a few others which kind of niche. They have to have kind of a specialty things to make it. But Super Value is a part of an oligopoly. Winco is very large, but they're very difficult time making it. Yeah. Huh? Target operates like an oligopoly and a monopoly. Yeah. It's for town and country now. Yeah, that's kind of a niche market. It's only store on that side, so it has an advantage because of convenience. And if you go in there, they try to get people in with like a really good deli, but really good specialty service that the big ones can't do. That's the only way they can do it is by specialized. But you notice there's something wrong. Well, Winco's kind of in that area too. Really hard to compete. So I guarantee you, town and country's profit margins. They make it, they do okay. It's hard. I like it. You know, it's hard for them to compete. So, biggest competitive advantage. And then think about when I was a kid, there were little stores all over. And if you go through old part of Hellenist, you see these Hellenist, there's homes house and this weird kind of boxy thing that might be a home. That was an old corner market. All driven up. There used to be a grocery store about 3 blocks from my house called the B&B. It's gone. Now it's a little tiny little place. It just caters to the people who live there. It used to be a full grocery store. It's gone. Now there's office buildings where it was. It's all gone. Why? Big. That's a competitive advantage. So, big has an advantage, and the greater the size, more risk. Do you see a trend here? Do you see a trend? Do you see a trend? Big has competitive advantage, but who can get big? How many places can get big? And let's get to one more thing. Laissez-faire is hands off of competition. Well, if government sits back and said, we're not going to deal with if what companies become monopoly or not, we're just going to let it all work out. And if some companies succeed, fine, and some don't. What's going to happen to the number of producers, up or down? See a lot of abbreviation there, right? If government does not do anything about monopolies, because it's hands off of competition, will there be more producers in a market or less producers? If size has a big advantage and only a few can get bigger, there'll be fewer and fewer and fewer and fewer. And if there's fewer and fewer, where is the money going to flow? To fewer and fewer people. Adam Smith knew this, but he didn't realize what the machines would do to accelerate this. So what are we going to have? The market's promoting equality. By definition, that's one of the reasons you hate a monopoly. Wealth goes to us, the monopolies. Just awful. This is another table of the wealth in the hands of 1%. Wealth flows to them. Is that bad? Yeah. It could be bad. If the wealth flows at the top, that could really hurt the market because there's going to be less demand, less money for other people. And couldn't they use their money to get political influence to rig the system for them? Oh, yeah. And we've seen that happen in our history. That's one of the reasons for the Declaration of Independence. Don't forget, the number one cause for independence is not taxes, it's monopoly. That was the number one cause. But can inequality be good? If you see somebody doing well, wouldn't that encourage you to take more risks and work harder? And there's an element of that. And if they do well, would that potentially create more wealth and prosperity? And if they got wealthy by having more innovation, wouldn't that innovation lead to more prosperity, more technological advancement, a higher standard of living? There's not one yes or no. Hey, you've got to decide what's more important. That's you. That's politics. That's politics. Back to this though. But one other thing. the market doesn't like capitalism. Capitalism is a market economy, but they don't want a market. What do they want? A monopoly. Is this a bad thing? No. Adam Smith predicted it. There's a natural progression, but it's going to accelerate because of machines. So Smith said the role of the government is anti-monopoly. That's the role. He thought laissez-faire, but that's pre-capitalism. But no one reads Smith. Those who want monopoly will say laissez-faire. And they could say it all the time. Adam Smith said laissez-faire, but that's not exactly what he meant. One more thing I got to tell you. In the 1880s, these massive conglomerates were created called a trust. They're gone. They're called a trust. So when they decided to limit the trust, which were making monopolies, they called these laws antitrust. So in the United States, the anti-monopoly laws are called antitrust. Has everyone got that? I don't want to have to repeat that over and over again. We'll come back to it, but antitrust is anti-monopoly. And that's really stupid now, because trusts are gone. We should say anti-monopoly, because generally Americans hate monopolies, even though they don't like it. Talk to anybody from farmers to small businessmen, anybody who owns any kind of, anybody who owns a printer. They don't like monopolies because they make you buy their ink now. Really expensive. There's all kinds of stuff like monopolies. People don't generally like it, but they don't know what antitrust laws are. So now, Adam Smith would say we need to control the monopolies. A new movement was created out of capitalism called socialism. And socialists looked at this and said, you see what's going on here? That is why capitalism is inherently formed. They like the market. They like the production. The early socialists, they liked the idea of wealth, more wealth flowing into the country. They were mad that the wealth was all flowing to the top. So they're against these classes. We'll come back to socialism. Have you, some of you heard of antitrust laws? Has anyone ever heard of those? Few? Yeah, that's anti-monopoly laws. And it's not a good name. Oh, by the way, since governments make policy, it's a big deal. And we vote for the executive branch, which enforces the laws. Is President Trump pro-monopoly or anti-monopoly? He has no problem. He's doing everything he can to avoid it. He supports them. And any restrictions against monopolies that were done during the Biden administration, he's reversed. So he believes wealth flowing to the top encourage wealth and prosperity. That's what he believes. And also well, Mike, there's a selfish interest, but that's accepted. So what is capitalism? It's a market economy now with two distinct classes. And these classes are going to be divided, and one's going to be bigger than the other. What is one? Well, this is a picture, and I'll show this again. After the Civil War, they started calling the big industrialists who controlled all the capital. They called them robber barons. Some of you might have heard that term before. We'll come back to that. These are the capitalists. Marx called them, kind of after the medieval term of these merchant class in France, called them, you ever heard the bourgeoisie? The bourgeoisie. Well, I want to say the bourgeoisie because I learned it in the United States, but it's more the bourgeoisie. The French term for middle class. And here's the thing, they take all the risk, but they get all the profit. And this is a valid argument they make. You don't have to agree with it, but it's valid. I take all the risk. Shouldn't I get the profit? Because if we go under, I'm the one who risked. I made the risk. But once again, you do not have to agree. It's more complex. And then we have labor. Marx would call the labor the proletariat. You might know where that term comes from? Rome, ancient Rome. That was the lower class of Rome, the proles. And all they get are wages. They don't get the profit. They don't have the capital. And what? They get wages. And what's the only thing they have to get wages? Their labor. All they got. And they got to sell their labor. I sell my labor. Some of you have already sold your labor, and you will sell it again, which is actually kind of scary. That means everything's for sale. Scary. Everything's for sale. So that's the system, and I chose a sweatshop in New York City for that. That's a new system, and this is scary. And what it's going to create? A lot of income inequality. A lot of income inequality. Wealth is going to flow to those who have the capital, which once again, we could argue good or bad thing. That's a decision you have to make. That's politics. And by the way, if you decide not to make that decision, somebody will make that decision for you. Probably somebody who has more influence than you, aka somebody with a lot of money. Back to this. This is a good, I thought this diagram was pretty good. This is a national income share of the top 50% and the bottom 50%, which would be half the population, and the top 1%. This is income, not wealth. And look what happens. Here's a lot more money in the top 50%. And look what happens beginning in late 70s, but especially in 1980. Like that. And look what happens to the income of the top 1%. Income inequality. I should have. This is your world, where there's less wealth for the majority of people. This is the world I was in. It's totally different world. And so the insecurities of my age are different than the insecurities here. And so we both got to understand. You have to understand I come from a different world, but it is incumbent on me to understand that you are not facing much. We all have insecurities. There's always things that are happening. It's a different world, and that's what it is today. And that means a greater wealth gap. And that graph on the left is something I'm only going to explain that one, but that one still blows me away. That is the percentage of wealth up to 2021. That's the latest I could find. Not the 1%, the richest 400 families. Isn't that kind of shocking? The richest 3 families in America now have more wealth than the bottom 50%. Right now. That's income inequality. Now, is that good or bad? Once again, you make the decision. But there is an issue. Demand will drop, which is very scary because if demand drops, that we might already be in a recession. But prices are going up. We are in an interesting time. So here is 2 cartoons. I just like to tackle this one hand. See it? But here's my cartoon I just thought was pretty clever. There it is again. The invisible hand of the marketplace giving us the thing. Okay, so laissez-faire economics will come out. This will become then the economic system of new capitalism. The first economic system. Laissez-faire economics. So it's hands-off competition. Don't mess with how we compete. And that means how we try to undercut our competitors, how we try to control a market, how workers are treated. That's all part of the market. Hands off. So laissez-faire said, don't mess with us. And don't forget, economies of scale favors the big. That's very important. If it's hands off of competition, who will win? The big. And then, but we want massive aid. We want government aid. We want help. Remember Hamilton? This is very Hamiltonian. But a new idea would come about. Henry Clay of Kentucky will propose a series of laws to help business and economic growth called the American system. Now, we'll come back to the American system, but this is going to be debated over and over and over again through the Civil War. Abraham Lincoln adored Henry Clay. So, government aid, and then don't tell us what we're going to do with it. And there's been massive government aid. We've already talked about railroads, roads, canals, etc. And then they want immigration. There were no immigration restrictions at all. They want as much immigration as possible. If all of a sudden a number of immigrants come into the market, the labor market, what does that do to wages? In the short run, it drops. Because immigrants will almost always accept lower wages. Most of the immigrants that come in are going to be desperate. And yes, they are very hardworking. I know nobody harder working than immigrants to the United States. But in the long run, immigration actually raises because it increases the size of the market. Because if you get more people in the market, no, I mean free immigration, where they have where they will become equal citizens, because they buy more goods, and immigrants are incredible innovators, because they come into a situation where they came to the US because they don't have a lot, and so they're desperate to make it, and they innovate. I'll give you a really good example of how innovative immigrants are to the United States. Look at food. The influence, the innovation in food that immigrants made. I mean, I can't even imagine how dull food must have been before Italian immigrants or before Hispanic immigrants. And yes, I still vividly remember seeing the first ever very exotic restaurant called Taco Bell. I can still remember that. That was very exotic. It's just amazing. By the way, if you don't give immigrants equal status, that will keep wages low. So this is the basis of, this is conservative economics. It's very help us, but then don't mess with its well-being. It's closer to conservative economics to them. This is it. Laissez-faire. So Monday, we'll go through reactions, socialism, communism, labor unions. Oh God, it's a totally new world. Education, a religious revival that will shake religion to its very foundations. Christmas, it's all coming. It's all coming. Are you guys gonna be okay being away from me for a full weekend? It's gonna be hard. Don't just kind of lurk around here. You don't want to do. Just try to make it till Monday. Everyone got the reading assignment? When's the quiz gonna be? Tuesday. How many questions? Less than 80. 10. Sound good? Yeah, they got 10. All right. We had really pretty bad inflation numbers come out today. All federal workers aren't being paid, but they made the workers at the Bureau of Labor Statistics come back because we need the inflation numbers for various reasons. So it's a little bit late. Yeah, they're not being paid. But you have who's a federal worker. What's that? This is not time. This is
But I think it's hope we get paid. You know, I'm trying to get up to where Elijah is. They got to use longer than
He did?
doesn't have ready. What do you mean? Lumber loose eagles? The meditate thing has lumber eagle. Yeah, 17.
Let's hope they get paid. I'm worried this one long. Goodbye, everybody. And I'm gonna be good luck. Oh, essentially, all I saw was look like December, and I couldn't figure it out.
Please.
Goodbye, good luck.
Thank you.
People on approaches come in, people on approaches go out. It's that time of year, but only come 1 week or 2 weeks. And then walking gas. That's not. It's not great or not better. I'm still filming. Well, play. Say goodbye to our viewing audience, if it worked.